Hey everyone, it's Shelby here. Welcome back to A Little Literary Love. I'm glad you are with me today. I decided to film this video sans makeup. So we have barefaced Shelby here. Hello, hi. Because honestly, I'm probably going to end up crying during this video anyway. We're here to talk about the books that I read in the first half of August. Y'all, oh my goodness. I don't know what is going on. I have had best, the best reading month so far. All of these books that I've read have been 4 stars and above, and over half of them, like 3 of them, I have 3 new 5-star reads and 1 4.5-star read. Guys, this does not happen to me. Y'all know I am a stingy 5-star rater. Like it doesn't happen. You have to like wow me, and it has to like, usually for me, if it sparks some sort of emotion, then I'll give it a 5-star, and I have a 3. It's been it's been a really like heavy hitter kind of month of reading. So I have 6 books to talk about, which is also kind of ironic because today that I'm filming this, like this whole past week in my like normal everyday life, like my reality and like work and everything has been like a terrible week. Like it's been horrible. Everybody's sick. I'm actually home from work today because my kid is sick and I had nobody to watch her. So I'm here. And I thought I would take advantage to film this video for you all since I've got like nothing else. Well, actually, I do have a lot of things to do, and I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, it's been terrible, and my ex and his family are all sick, and it's just lots of like stress has been going on. So then the fact that I've been able to like get some of these books in, which honestly I've been reading because like reading is just that like comfort thing for me. And I've been listening to like some audiobooks and they've been really good, and just all of these books. I did not mean to pick up a whole bunch of books that were so heavy on the emotions and like heavy on the topics that they discuss. And some of them I did not realize had some of those topics in them and how hard they would hit. So, like, not necessarily, I wasn't trying to plan that, but then, like, all of these books, man, like, they've been so good. Like so good. So like I said, I've read 6 books. We're gonna get into them. I'm not sure how long this video is gonna be because I'm probably gonna start rambling about them. And like I said, you'll know me with, if I feel very strongly about something, I usually end up crying. So I have that feeling that as I'm talking about these books, I'm gonna end up crying. So there you are. That's me. Hi. Um, Anyway, okay, I'm going to stop rambling. We're going to get into the books that I read. So, starting with They Called Me a Lioness, A Palestinian Girl's Fight for Freedom by Ahed Tamimi and Dina Takuri. Takuri? I can't read my writing, excuse me. So this is not actually a romance book. This is not part of my normal repertoire of books that I read, but I am trying to work on my goals of reading more nonfiction this year. I have been failing at that. I have only read one nonfiction book prior to this one. So then I picked up this one. This is a memoir about Ahed Tamimi. She is a Palestinian girl, and this was honestly something that I really wanted to read because I have been following pretty closely the genocide that is happening with Palestinian people that Israel is committing. So I wanted to read this book about, to read more about the perspective of somebody that is on a Palestinian person. So this is talking about her life basically up until like late teens, with just what is like living in occupied Palestine. So she is actually living in the West Bank. So Palestine is like split up. I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure it's split up into two. We have Gaza, and then we have the West Bank that they were forced into when Israel was created. Israel was created on occupied land on Palestinian land. And during the Nakba of 1943, they were all forcibly removed from their homes and forced into these very, very small sections of this area. So, like I said, Ahed is and her family. She was born in the West Bank in this very small village. It's small enough that pretty much like everybody knows everybody else, and they're all sort of related in some different way. And she just kind of talks about what life is like living under occupied or living under an occupied rule by Israel. And it takes us up to she gets arrested and placed in jail at 16. And then to the end of the book when after she is released. And it kind of talks about her daily struggles of having her home constantly raided, of watching her family members get shot, of there's this thing called like skunk water that was created that smells absolutely horrendous, of them getting hosed down with it, for the most part, very peaceful protests of this occupation. And there's like a point in the book where she talks about in her home, like it was during summer and they had the windows open because it was too hot to close the windows. And she wakes up to a gun to her face that an Israeli soldier has placed his gun through the window towards her. And then, like I said, she gets arrested at 16, which breaks the act of her arrestment or the arrest. I cannot talk today. Excuse me. I apologize. But the whole act of her getting arrested and her imprisonment and the what she was subjugated to and the questions she was asked breaks so many international laws. It's ridiculous. So she gets in prison at 16 because she ends up slapping an Israeli soldier for not getting off of her property, her family's property. And this is actually something that has gone viral. I don't know if you've ever seen this video or this photo of her. I remembered seeing it before, but I didn't really know the context of it or where this was from, what it was for. So now it was interesting to kind of put that into context so I know where that comes from. And I was just, so this is one of my 5 stars. It was hit the ground running with this one, which is honestly kind of weird to like rate memoirs to me, but I did go ahead and rate this, just because overall I felt like how her story was written was done very well. And it's just a purpose to show, hey, this is my truth, this is what happened to me. And I really liked seeing her strength that she shows even from being a child and forced to be a part of this, and all of the freedoms that are taken away from them on a daily basis. It's just heartbreaking for me, and I feel like this is going to be one of those books that is going to be very influential for me, that is very impactful, and that I'm not going to forget about. Just because, number one, because of her strength, I felt like that was very inspiring, and I would like to believe that I could have that strength as well. See, I'm already starting to cry. I knew that was going to happen. But then also, there's just so many points in this book that I can take away for myself. But then also that I just feel like this is such an important book for everybody to read, because especially here in Western culture in America, Palestinian and their voices are very suppressed. What you are going to hear in the news is more about Israel, and especially because the US is a major backer of Israel, which I absolutely do not agree with. So sorry to get a little bit political, but this is how it is. I'm going to be honest about that. And you're not going to hear about that in the news. You're going to hear about the hostages from that Hamas took, and they don't spread any light to anything else. So you aren't hearing the entire story. So I feel like this is just in a very important book to be able to see the underdog side, basically, um, and to see what the truth of what Palestinians are facing. So I think this is a very important book to read, and I would encourage all of you that are watching this video to please pick this book up, and also just make sure you're doing your research on anything that you hear in the news, because there's always more than one side. So okay, moving on. Then I read 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I have been trying to read this book all summer. I originally started this back in June because I thought that was appropriate with the title. And I just kept getting distracted and trying to do other things and read other things. So I never got around to actually getting through this book. So I actually had some time and I ended up being able to finish this book. So this is, I'm, it technically is a romance, like a contemporary romance. It also kind of reads a little bit like a women's fiction story. But there is technically an HEA at the end. So I would consider that a romance. I don't know. Anyway, so this is about these two characters, Eva and Shane, and they end up reconnecting and meeting each other again at this literary event. They are both writers, and they spend some time together and just remember this week that they spent together when they were teenagers in the beginning of June. And so it's June again, and there's like some correlation there. And you come to find out that both of these characters have been writing about each other in their books over the years, and that they love each other. But some things happened when they were teenagers that caused them to not be together anymore, and for them to like move apart, and now they have all these years between them. um, Eva is also a single mom now, so she's also kind of wary about rekindling something between them, but they do end up rekindling their romance, but it just definitely has um, they both have a lot of baggage. So this is one of those heavy hitters. I ended up giving this one 4 stars because I did really enjoy it. The writer has a very quirky and witty writing style, which at first I wasn't really too sure about, but I came to enjoy it by the end of this. How she brought in some humor to this, their very dark past. So there are lots of trigger warnings in this book. There is drug use, there is an overdose, there is alcoholism and addiction. Um, I'm trying to think of what else. There is self harm in this one. There is also death of a loved one, basically. So there's a lot of heavy topics in this book. Both of these characters as teenagers are going through a lot, which is part of where they kind of started to form this bond with each other. And then, like I said, they kind of were writing about each other over the years. This definitely has a little bit of character growth, especially with the male main character. The reason why I bumped this down a little bit was because of Eva and some of the stuff, like how, like her relationship a little bit with like her daughter kind of felt off to me, but it also takes place in New York. So honestly, like, I don't know if just the area, like, raising your kids is different than where I'm at and how I've been taught. But they end up having a fight, and how it was resolved, like, felt strange to me. Like, it didn't necessarily feel totally resolved. So I kind of felt like that was a little bit weird. This also does, of course, have lots of mental health representation in this one. We also have chronic disability in representation with this one because Eva has chronic migraines, which honestly I really like seeing because I also have chronic migraines. So it was kind of nice to see that in a fictionalized character. Steam on this is really low, which honestly, most of the books that I read for August, the steam is pretty low, which is not my normal. But this was a very good book, and I am glad that I finally finished this book. And I do want to continue reading on with some of Tia Williams' other stories that she has written because I did enjoy this one. Then I read Where There's a Will by Ember Hughes. This is the first book in her Conway Collateral duet. Ember Hughes is also another name for Daisy Jane. This is her foray into the world of dark romance. So she typically writes more contemporary taboo romance. So we have this one. This was actually an arc that I read. And so this is this is a dark romance. This follows Colton, and he is coming back to his hometown after fleeing his hometown when he was very young, like teenager age, because his girlfriend broke up with him and he just didn't want to face having to see her anymore because he is so heartbroken over it. So anyway, he is coming back into town. It's been years later because his father has died. So he is coming back to help his younger sister figuring out things. And when he comes back, he realizes that like his younger sister is pissed off because their father ended up gambling away their land to their next door neighbor who happens to be his ex-girlfriend's father. So he goes over to their place to somewhat confront his ex-girlfriend's father to see about how he can take their land back from him. And he's kind of doing like some snooping around, and he ends up getting captured by his ex-girlfriend's father. And he realizes that at first he thought that his ex-girlfriend had left because nobody has seen her in many, many years, only come to find out that she has still been living in her house, and she is also a captive, so to speak, of her father. So this becomes a story about how survival, I guess, and how they are going to try to escape her father's clutches because he is a very, very, very bad man. So this one I ended up giving 4 stars. There were points of it that I didn't really care for, but overall, I mean, I use the term enjoyed it very loosely because this is a very dark book. They go through a lot of things, especially we have abuse and sexual assault that her father does to her. And there's also abuse and physical assault that he does to him. Ends up being a second chance romance because they end up rekindling their love for each other and their faith in one another within this story. But yes, again, another very heavy hitter of a book. Steam on this one. This one might be the highest as far as steam goes. This is a medium high, I would say. And it's all about them just, and I really enjoyed that too, with them rekindling the romance and strengthening that bond that they shared again, and just getting through this terrible ordeal that they're going through. So I do want to continue reading on whenever Ember Hughes or Daisy Jane ends up putting more books out in this dark romance area. And then just in general, I kind of want to read more from Daisy Jane because so far I've been really enjoying the books that she has put out. Then I read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. So this is actually a third book of the Part of Your World series. I did not realize that when I started this book, but I believe this is a story of standalones, and I didn't necessarily feel like I was missing out on anything by having not read the other books of the series first. However, after reading this one, I for sure will be going back to her other books, and quite possibly reading every book she has ever written. So this is a contemporary romance rom-com. This is about Emma and Justin. Yes, Justin. So they end up starting to chat through like DMs from the internet because they realize that they are both very unlucky in love. Anytime they date, after they break up with that person ends up going on to find their soulmate right after them. So they decide, she's a traveling nurse, so she decides to take up a contract in Minnesota where he is at, and they decide to fake date, in hopes of canceling out each other's unluckiness. And once they like break up, then they hopefully will end up, the next person that they meet and date will be their true love. However, again, this starts as a rom-com, but ends up being another heavy hitter of a book. So things kind of go awry because Justin is actually about to take full custody of his younger siblings because his mother is going to prison for embezzlement. And then Emma, for whatever reason, her toxic, estranged mother also comes to this town where she's at, and kind of causes a lot of mayhem for her. And it brings up a lot of different issues that she has faced over the years with her childhood with her toxic mother. And then because of all of these things that are happening in their individual lives, they become really honest with each other and become really good friends, and they realize that they are actually starting to have real feelings for one another, which kind of throws a wrench in their whole fake dating plans to end up finding their soulmates like afterwards. So this was so good, guys. This was I loved this book. So I absolutely, obviously ended up giving this one 5 stars. The characters in this was honestly, they were so complex and they felt so real. And both of them have great character growth, which is one of my favorite things to read about. I love when characters try to better themselves and improve themselves. So I love seeing that. This also has a lot of talks about mental health. There is a lot of different types of mental health things going on in this book. So we have panic attacks, anxiety, depression, and PTSD, basically, and other trigger warnings, and mostly stemmed from Emma with her toxic mother. As a child, she faced neglect and abandonment by her mother. So this is definitely really triggered her later on in life. So she ends up realizing that throughout the story. I am also going to point out this is a bit spoilery for the book, so I will put a little spoilers thing here. If you want to kind of skip over that, you're more than welcome to. But this does end up featuring a third act breakup in here, which I normally do not like. Like I hate when authors use that ploy to carry on the story. However, I feel like it was done really well in this book because the whole purpose of the third act breakup was for one of the characters, Emma. She is actually realizing her boundaries, and she is having to set her limits and step away from the situation because she knows that if she stays in this situation, she will end up becoming more like her mother, or just not being a person that she wants to be. So she realizes that she needs to step away from the situation, to try to work on herself and be better to potentially come back. So that is the only reason that I actually was okay with the third act breakup because I feel like it was just done really well and it made sense for these characters, and I honestly really applaud this character for doing that, for knowing her limits and realizing that she needed to do something else and breaking the habits that she has had in the past. So I really, really enjoyed that and really applaud that. But yeah, so overall, this was just such a good book. I really, really enjoyed this one. I would say the steam on this is more on the lower side, and it was definitely more of a slow burn romance. But I honestly quite enjoyed that. I loved everything about this book. Like, it was so amazing, and for sure, I will be reading more from this author. I actually have 2 more books, like physical copy books from this author, and yeah, I want to read like everything that she has written. I understand the hype for this author now. Like, everybody really loves her, and I definitely understand, and I need more from her. Then we have Curvy Girl Summer by Danielle Allen. This is also a book that I have been trying to get to and read all summer long, because this came out early June and I was planning on reading it right away and I never did. So here we are. I finally got to it and I'm so happy that I did because I also really love this one. So this is about Aaliyah. She ends up having a one night stand with her ex-boyfriend and realizing that this is not what she wanted for her life. And then she ends up being somewhere like a party or something with a lot of her family members, and they keep making all these like snide comments about her clock is ticking and the reason why she doesn't have a man and that she's not married is because of her personality, for one, and then also her body because she is a plus size woman. She snaps back at them and does calls them out for this, does not like that they said these things, and then decides that she is going to start dating and enter the world of online dating to try to find a date and a man for herself for her 30th birthday, which is going to happen at the end of the summer, to prove all of them wrong. So, number one, absolutely loved that. But then she ends up going on her first date from the online world and she meets them at a bar. And we have Ahmad, who is a bartender there, and they strike up this conversation and she kind of tells him what is going on. And he agrees to kind of watch out for her. And he makes this deal with her, like, hey, bring all of your first dates here, and that way you have somebody that's on your side. If something goes wrong, I can be here to kind of like protect you. So she agrees, and so they end up interacting with each other more and more, and they become really good friends. They have this really good connection towards each other, and of course it ends up being their romance. And yeah, it was so good. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I mostly loved this story because of Aaliyah. I love seeing such a strong and fierce female main character in books. And the fact, what I really loved about her is that she faces a lot of fat phobia in this one. She gets a lot of terrible comments to her. She gets a lot of backhanded compliments. And it was just, it sucked, but it was also really cool to see how she handled herself with all of these, because every single time she shuts that crap down, and she is somebody that she loves herself and she is proud of herself and feels good in her own skin. She loves getting dressed up and looking nice, and so she knows that she is beautiful. And I just love seeing somebody, especially a female character, knowing their worth and not giving a crap what anybody else thinks and not settling for anything less than what she deserves. I loved that. Like, 100% hands down loved that. And I just think that Danielle Allen did such a great job with that one. My only caveat, so Ahmed was honestly not my favorite character. He wasn't terrible. He was fine. And he did grow on me throughout the story. They also, I kind of wish Danielle Allen would have put some trigger warnings in this book. I don't really have a whole lot of triggers, so it didn't really bother me as much, but I could see potentially some of it bothering people because this does feature death of loved one for both of them. And he is kind of like, honestly kind of going through like some PTSD stuff that he's working through. So I kind of wish she would have featured that and put that in like the beginning of the book. But otherwise, this was a great book. And Danielle Allen has a really long backlist of books. And I really want to get to all of them. Like, I've only read two. I think this is honestly only my second book from her. But every time, both of them have been absolutely fantastic, and I really want to get to more books from her because I really really like her as an author. Like, she writes so well, and I love these strong fierce characters. It was fantastic. And then we finally get to the last book that I read for the first half of August, which was probably arguably the heaviest of hitters of all of these books that I have read. That is going to be Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan. This is the first book of her Hoops series. I have tried to read this book before, and I had to put it down because I kept trying to listen to this on audiobook, which is how I ended up finishing it this time around. And I did an audiobook because this is one of the like free audiobooks like in the Audible Plus catalog. So if you're a Audible member, they have this big long catalog of just books that you don't have to spend credits on. You can just listen to these. So all of the books in this series, and I believe her Grip trilogy is also on there, which I read last year and I absolutely loved. Or no, it was a couple of years ago. Sorry, my bad. Anyway, so again, I tried to read this before and I could not get through it because I really did not like the female narrator and how she did it, but I decided to try to push through it and continue reading this book, and I am so glad that I did. Guys, this book. So number one, I I love Kennedy Ryan. And I especially love her for this book because there are very, very heavy trigger warnings for this one. And not only does she like say that, hey, this is in this book, she actually puts it on the back of the book in the blurb. So if you read the blurb of what this book is about, you know it is going to feature domestic violence and domestic abuse. Um, so that's why this is a very heavy hitter. So this is about Iris and August. They meet at like the tail end of college. They're at a bar. She is watching a basketball game and they end up having a connection because he is also a basketball star and he is hoping to go pro. And she is wanting to have a job involved within the basketball world. And they have this just, they chat for so long, they have this instant connection, but she's already in a relationship, so he kind of has to wait it out, and wait for his chance to be with her, but he's going to end up doing whatever it takes to finally be with her. They just have to, he has to play the long game. They have to wait for quite a while, and that is mostly because Iris is in this relationship with another basketball player. He ends up going pro and she accidentally gets pregnant with his kid. And she wants to continue on with a career, but then very early on in her pregnancy, she has to be put on bed rest for the entirety of her pregnancy. And then she kind of starts to see his true colors. And again, we enter into this very horrendous and horrific battle for her, because he is abusive towards her and she feels trapped by him, and she 100% is. He threatens her, and there's like points in this one, like it was very emotional for me to read. um this was a very hard book to get through, um just for like what she faces. So I obviously gave this one 5 stars. It was so amazing. Ugh. I'm trying to get through doing this video without absolutely breaking down and sobbing. I felt so many emotions for this book, and this one definitely features a very slow burn type of romance, because these characters do not get together until like the very end of this book. It was very slow. Iris has a lot that she has to get through to finally come out at the end on top. Ugh. And I I love that Kennedy Ryan tackled this type of topic. Because I felt for Iris so badly. Not that I don't want to say, because I have not experienced domestic violence or domestic abuse. My ex and I are on very good terms, but Kennedy Ryan just has a way of making her characters so real and so raw. Um, and I just, like I said, I felt for Iris and I was rooting for her and I was saddened by what was happening to her. And I was angry. God, I was so angry reading this book. Just because, even though this is fiction, this is Iris and August's story is not real. But at the same time, it is. Because this type of thing happens every single day to women, and they are brushed off. They are victim blamed. And especially if something like this happens in this type of situation with a sports star. He is in basketball. He is this superstar. He's a celebrity. Has this persona to the rest of the world that he is this golden boy, that he can do no wrong, and he is just this all-star good guy. So if she goes anywhere, nobody's going to believe her. And because he is so powerful, he has so much money, he has all these connections, she can't go anywhere and she won't be believed. Not only that, because he was also threatening to kill her and threatening to take her child away from her. He ploys all this stuff because very early on in she mentions that she has postpartum depression, and he uses that against her, to tell her that she will never be able to see her child again, because she ended up keeping this journal to help her get through some of the emotions that she was having during her postpartum depression. And she talks about just different comments about, like later on, she ends up meeting, like volunteering somewhere, and she meets these women who are talking about this other person that was supposed to be volunteering with them, and talking about how she's in this like abusive relationship, and they just blame her for staying in it and being like, oh, why didn't she leave? And they're like, well, if I was in that kind of relationship, well, I would snap back at them, I would leave right away. And she's just like, Iris is frozen because she feels so bad for herself that she hasn't been able to leave. And it's so fucking heartbreaking reading that, because like I said, this 100% happens every single day in the media, in the news, just talking to people like that I know at work that do that kind of thing, that victim blaming kind of thing. It just makes me so angry. So I love this book. I loved it with my whole heart and soul. I loved that Kennedy Ryan brought light to this topic and talked about it. So like I said, it is a very heavy, heavy book. So if domestic violence is a trigger for you, definitely don't pick this one up. But if you think you can get through this, this will hands down be one of my all-time favorite books. All-time favorite. And again, I feel like I've been a little bit spoilery for this one, but I am also going to put a little spoilers thing up here. I love Iris, and I love that Kennedy Ryan writes characters like this, that they fight for themselves and they try to solve their own problems. And that happens in this one, and I loved seeing that she would not let August fight her battles for her. And at the end, we end up getting where she ends up saving herself. And I absolutely love seeing that too. I love seeing these strong and fierce female characters stand up for themselves and fight back and win at the end. So this was amazing, and August was absolutely the best counterpart to Iris. He was just such a great guy and great man, and just some of the comments that he ends up making to Iris is just, they made me cry too. They were absolutely perfect and exactly what she needed to hear, to help her feel like she is worthy of love again. And it was just, that part of the book was absolutely beautiful. I knew I was gonna get very emotional talking about this one, and I honestly probably will never be able to read this book ever again, but it will remain one of my all-time favorite books. It was so good. Like, it gets more than 5 stars. It gets like an infinity stars. And I need to read more Kennedy Ryan. I am slowly trying to work through all of Kennedy Ryan's books. I just have to go very slow with it, because Kennedy Ryan's books tend to make this happen to me, where I get so emotional and invested in the story, and I just end up leaving the book like a sobbing mess, but like kind of in the best way. So I feel like a wreck right now, but yeah, this is the honest and raw me of how I love reading and I love these stories. So 100% recommend reading these, unless they are triggering for you. Then absolutely don't read them. But if they are not triggering, I beg you to read these books, because they're so fucking good. Okay, I'm gonna sign out. This is a very long video and I need to kind of like decompress. But I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please, leave a thumbs up button if you enjoyed watching this and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. Leave a comment down below too if you have read any of these books and also enjoyed them, or if talk about some of the favorite books that you've read this month so far. I love hearing from you guys. But that is going to be it. I will see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.